So that, how long did that last? Well, it must have been quite a...
I was yachting for 5 years, I think.
And then come the late 60s, you suddenly upped and went across to the US and sort of...
Well, it wasn't actually like that. I mean, I lived a sort of totally sort of schizoid existence. What I used to do was I'd work during the summer on this yacht, save up all my money, and then I'd go off in the winter and do what I wanted to do. And that I was sort of tramping around London, following a lot of trots around, sort of like on demonstrations, like all of us were, quite pointlessly. And one winter I travelled across the States. I was very influenced by Jack Kerouac, you know, and like all the on the road stuff and all that. Yeah. And
so if you're going to San Francisco, we sort of brought you there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so I travelled across Route 66 and visited communes and things in the States.
And would you go to Haight Ashbury in San Francisco?
Yeah,
was that still on the go then, or was it starting to generate?
No, it was starting to generate, but it was still very much happening. And and of course, like the Black Panthers were very, very important at the time. And I remember I met this girl who was trying to create some kind of liaison between with the Black Panthers, and I was very impressed with that.
Oh, you would be, yeah. Who wouldn't? And you must have dropped acid in San Francisco.
Yeah, I took my first trip in San Francisco. Yeah,
got to be done, mate. Got to be done.
Yeah. And then, of course, when the winter was over, whatever I decided to do during the winter, I'd get my hair cut and back on the yacht.
Back on the yacht.
Very strange.
None the wiser.
Very weird.
Right. Dropping acid as you sort of set out from the med.
Yes, right. Yeah.
So after that sort of that life, though, you came back to England, and I think you met Barbara, your wife. And then you moved to Devon and bought a cottage and set up in 3 acres and started to look at being self-sufficient.
Well, we didn't buy a cottage. We rented. This was pre-decimalisation. We rented one for 15 shillings a week for a cottage and 3 acres. But, I mean, at that time, I'm sure you remember that there was a big sort of back to the land kind of movement in anarchy. A lot of people talking about it in anarchism rather than actually doing it. But we were lucky enough. We found ourselves in a situation where we could rent this cottage, and we had.
And was the idea you'd be sort of self-sufficient, grow all your own food?
Yeah, there was an experiment in self-sufficiency, which was great fun, and we did it, and we were quite successful, I have to say.
The other thing that is interesting about that time, I know you told me earlier that there was lots of people going around the country, like Nick Saunders, doing alternative guides to Britain, and it was the area of crash pads and safe houses, and I think your place was listed as a crash pad. And I just looking back at that now, it seems so weird. Anyone would turn up and you put them up in your house for about 3 years. You know, Charlie Manson at the door, come on in. How did that work out, being listed in the crash pads guide to Britain?
It was good. It was really fine. I mean, like bit crash pads. Yeah, I mean, information centres were very much one of many kind of things that projects that people did. Not just anarchists, but people who termed themselves part of the alternative society. Yeah, information. Most of these information centres I found were actually giving information about other information centres. It's got to be said here, but nonetheless, BIT was the sort of creme de la creme of the information centres, and they had this list of places where you could stay, and as you rightly say, people turned up.
And did many people turn up?
Oh, hundreds of them, and we fed them all. We fed them all. We produced all our food, and we fed them all. And
did you manage
can I just say we're talking about like the kind of class struggle anarchism and alternative society anarchism and that kind of thing. In to get to our cottage, you had to walk through the local council estate, and all of these weird-looking visitors all had to walk through this estate, and they all had to ask directions to our cottage, right? Needless to say, some of the activities in that cottage weren't entirely legal, so we were in quite a vulnerable situation. We never ever had a bit of trouble. You know, Barbara used to work as a home help, and she was a well-respected member of the community. She was only 20 when we moved there, you know. And I used to, work on timber. We were just ordinary working people in the community. All right, so we were a little bit weird, but it was fine. Never had a bit of trouble.
And did the people who stayed for a bit, did they get stuck in and do some work?
Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they'd stay for overnight. Sometimes they'd stay for sort of 3 months. You know what I mean?
You never asked when are you leaving when they first turned up. It's amazing. It's a different world. You can't imagine that happening now.
No.
But this was quite near Plymouth, and you gradually got involved with a sort of anarchist group in Plymouth. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, Plymouth anarchists, and so we would, be producing our food all week. Saturdays we'd get the bus into Plymouth, no motor or anything, get the bus into Plymouth, and then we'd try and flog sort of Freedom, Black Flag. This is in the old days when Albert Meltzer was doing Black Flag, and solidarity pamphlets and that kind of, to these sort of bemused shoppers in Plymouth, So yes, the anarchist group was a big part of our life,
And I think you had the famous Fine Tube strike took place then in Plymouth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Fine Tube strike. That was a strike over sort of union recognition. Obviously, we were involved in it. We used to turn up for the pickets and so on and so forth. And it was on the actual the national picket that we met the Rising Free Collective.
Oh, right, the famous Rising Free Collective, and then subsequently you moved back away from Devon and you sort of moved to London and got involved with sort of Rising Free, or at least something that came out of it, a sort of situationist group in North London.
Well, there were us two, and then another comrade from Plymouth Anarchists. As a result of like conversations with the Fine Tubes picket with the Rising Free Collective, we decided we'd pool our resources, set up a pro-situationist squatters collective in North London and take the world by storm. So like gave up everything. I mean, ridiculous. I mean, I have to say, Ian, to be honest, it's a very easy thing for me to talk about now, but I mean, it was like traumatic for Barbara. Barbara was pregnant at the time, It was a ridiculous thing to do.
So it was a political imperative, really, that moved you. It was to do some politics and.
I mean, I lived, and I don't think I was wrong.
No, I think we all did that.
But anyway, we set off and we set up Wicked Messengers, as it was known.
Yeah, tell us about Wicked Messengers.
Well, Wicked Messengers specialised in sort of spoof posters and stickers. We also specialised in lots of like very stressful meetings about internal relationships within the group, as I remember it. But ostensibly, what we were into was like producing, spoof stickers and. I mean, some of that stuff's now quite famous in sort of art student circles. So keep warm this winter, make trouble, and like this store welcomes careful shoplifters.
Like you didn't put a copyright on that, you'd be a millionaire like Banksy.
The New Towns poster. I mean, that was either a product of Wicked Messengers or a collaboration between us and Suburban Press, who used to do our printing for us.
And you were squatting at this time?
Yeah.
And was that sort of, how did that pan out with a young kid, in terms of...
it wasn't easy. I mean, it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Some of my experience of situations from the time was that there were interminable arguments about relationships and jealousy and this, that and the other. Did you manage to escape that, or did you have a lot of sort of navel gazing every other day?
We were pretty busy, so I think we escaped it a lot more than some other groups. I've got to say that some of those comrades are still good friends, still, to this day, and some of them, I see, 2-3 times a year. And
did you sort of meet up with the other so-called situationists in London, or were you just sort of called yourself the?
Oh, definitely. I found it difficult to understand a lot. I mean, I never went to university, right? I was self-educated, so I had a bit of a sort of workerist attitude about people like that. So, but even a guy came from America to see this guy from an organisation called Point Blank. They sent him over from the States. He didn't like us. Didn't think we were very good at all.
It took the official situationist stamp away from you. Yeah. But you mentioned Suburban Press. So at this time you'd actually got. Was that when Jamie Reid was doing the Croydon stuff and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Jamie Reid and Sophie Richmond were two of the people involved in Suburban Press.
How did you come across them?
They, as I remember, that was through the Rising Free. I think,
right.
And of course, Rising Free at the time was involved in publishing "Leaving the 20th Century."
Oh.
Yeah, they published that, and Jamie and Sophie were involved in doing the artwork for it. And I don't think Suburban Press actually printed it, but I know they did the artwork for it. Yeah. Yeah, so that's how we met them, I guess.
Right, and what happened with them? Did you get them?
Well, they were good mates, and we used to see a lot of them. And eventually, what happened? I went back on the barges. Yeah. And
was this when you moved back to Coventry in the Grand Union Canal? Was that then?
Yes, that's sometime after. I mean, to her credit, Barbara stuck it out with Wicked Messengers for a fair while longer than me.
Yeah.
And